It's clear that Carolina needs point guard help, and while it won't do any good this season, Coach Davis did just thankfully offer the little brother of a current NBA player.
This is Tyler Zeller, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, what's up? It's Tuesday, January 13th, 2026. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Schade. You're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network out there. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch of the day. And I want to thank all our everydayers for being here, all the members of the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, and our insiders as well. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Coming up on the show today, Carolina offers Beckham Black, the little brother of Anthony Black. We'll talk about that. The Tar Heels flew out to California last night, Monday. They're about to try to do something this week that only one other ACC team has done. Portal news keeps rolling for football. I want to get you updated there. Before we dive into it, just a couple small tidbits. AP poll released on Monday, as it always does. Carolina moves up to 14th. So just budging up a little bit. Just got to keep stacking wins, and you'll keep moving up. We're now, this is crazy. You ready for this? We are over halfway through the regular season of men's college basketball. Not Carolina. Everyone plays 31 regular season games, and the Tar Heels have played 16 now. So that is nuts. Okay. Let's start with some recruiting news. And I know it's a little bit odd here in I guess it's mid-January now, to be talking recruiting news, especially recruiting news that is a couple years away. However, it seems pertinent right now, given the point guard struggles that the Tar Heels are going through, that everyone's kind of on the lookout for, okay, so we see that things aren't working right now, but what does Coach Davis and the staff have in the pipeline, right? Yeah, absolutely. That checks out. Whether that's going to get somebody in the portal, whether that's recruiting from the high school ranks, and that's what the case is right now. The player in question is 2027 five-star point guard Beckham Black. I love the name Beckham. That's rad. Beckham posted this offer on Twitter on Friday evening. This comes just a little bit after Coach Davis went down to Orlando, to Florida to see him play. Black is a 6'3", 180-pound guard. 6'3" currently. Not too long ago, he was 6 foot. And I would not be shocked if he's not done growing. Here's why I say it. His older brother, Anthony Black, you might remember that name, went to Arkansas a couple years ago. This is before Calipari was there. This is still the Eric Musselman area, who's now out at USC. Who's now out at USC. And Anthony Black came in, I think he was like 6'8" when he was at college, but he had this massive fro that made him like 7'47" and was just, he burst onto the scene and was something to behold at Arkansas. And so if Beckham, his little brother, who I've watched a lot of tape of, by the way, because he's really, really good, if he could be even 3/4 of what Anthony was in college, boy, would I love to have him be a Tar Heel. And so what I love about it is, again, as we're hoping that some of the point guards will continue to develop for North Carolina this season, that's what Black already is. He is a true throwback, pass first, I love to get teammates involved point guard, relishes the fact that dudes want to play with him because he is a point guard. Originally from Duncanville, Texas, he's moved down to Florida to play because Anthony plays for the Magic down there. It makes sense to go down there to play for Orlando Southeastern Prep is where he plays now. And so, and by the way, that team is loaded. I mean, loaded on teammates of his down at Southeastern Prep are CJ Rosser and Obina Akizi. Let me remind you of those guys because Carolina has offered both of them as well. CJ Rosser is a 6'10 power forward. At Rivals, he's number 1 in the class. At both ESPN and 247, he's number 2 in the class. Obina Akizi, the son of the great Maryland Obina Akizi player, 7-foot center, already taller than his daddy. He's number 2 at Rivals, number 3 at 247, and number 4 at ESPN. And then you bring in Beckham Black here alongside those guys because he recently came in to Southeastern Prep. And so you've got 3 top 20 players in the class. It's crazy, crazy stuff. To which I say, hey, could we just get all 3 of you dudes to come together as a trio? How cool would that be to get Southeastern Preps, like basically point guard, power forward, and center to all come play for Carolina after being used to playing together? I mean, these dudes are wildly good. As for Beckham Black himself, his rankings at 247, he is 19th. At ESPN, he is 6th. And at Rivals/On3, he is 18th. And as you, someone of his pedigree and someone that is playing as well as this dude is playing, has offers from a whole host of schools. Kentucky, obviously Arkansas, even though Coach Musselman's not there. That is where his brother went to school, so it makes sense. Miami recently offered. Virginia has offered. Auburn, Texas A&M, Texas, SMU, Oklahoma, Texas Tech. Again, he's from Texas, and so it makes sense that all those Texas schools are getting in on the act. I imagine a bunch of others will as well. But, man, you just think about the struggles this year at having somebody to really run the show. And you know what? I'm still hopeful. Kyan Evans, please rise to the occasion, Kyan Evans. But what Carolina has to ultimately find year in and year out is balance between, holy smokes, Caleb Wilson and Henri Veesaar are so good. If they could just have like a point guard. And so if you could find that balance year after year, that would be great. Beckham Black, obviously in my mind, from where he is right now, here in the class of 2027, which, by the way, are juniors, right? Class of 2026 are this year's seniors. Black is a 27 guy and is the 6th offer from Carolina in this class. So we'll keep tabs on it, keep our eyes on it, see where he's trending, what's going on there, as well as obviously all of Carolina's other offers in the class of 2027 as well, which I guess I should update you. Obviously, we've already named Obina Akizi. We've named CJ Rosser, but some of the other guys, another center in the class, Sayon Keita. I wonder if he's related to Keba Keita. That's at BYU because he's nice. I would definitely take that. I've never thought about that before with Keita. King Gibson, who's a combo guard, he's at Montverde down in Florida there. We already mentioned CJ Rosser, a couple other point guards as well. Nasir Anderson, who's from Norcross, Georgia. And then I guess I say point guard. Jordan Pope's more of a shooting guard. Jordan Page, more of a shooting guard. Who's from Raleigh, really close there. So those are the offers Carolina has out right now. And I said 6, but it's 6 others. I believe it's now up to 7 with the offer to Beckham Black. So, as we get into the spring here, it's going to be more and more time to start really keeping tabs on that of who from the class of 2026 and then 27 is going to be coming along. All right, let's turn back our attention to this year's team. The Heels are heading out west with the sweep on the brain, but to do so, they're going to have to achieve something only accomplished by one other team. I'll explain coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Wayfair, the new year's here, and it's the perfect time to reset your routine and refresh your space. Literally, earlier yesterday, my wife and I took all our Christmas boxes and paraphernalia and put them all up in the attic. It makes me so sad. And that means I need to refresh my space because I hate the way my house looks after Christmas because there's nothing fun or new. And Wayfair is the perfect place to help us figure that out as we're spending all this time at home in the winter months. That's why you got to get to Wayfair. It's this one-stop shop to get our home back on track. From bedding and mattresses to storage solutions for every room and resetting everything for the spring to make me feel happy again. Wayfair makes it easy to start the year fresh. They got everything I need all in one place. And you might be doing what I'm doing, like, hey, my house feels empty without the Christmas decorations. You want new stuff, but maybe you need to organize your space, or maybe like me, something else I need to do is update my work from home setup because, hello, this is where I work right here in this room. So Wayfair's huge selection makes it easy to find exactly what works for your style and budget. And shopping is easy. Delivery is smooth. Everything arrives exactly as expected. So it's honestly going to take Wayfair makes getting back into the routine this new year feel a lot more manageable. So get organized, get refreshed, get back on track this new year for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. Again, that's wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thanks for making Locked On Tar Heels your first listener. Watch and making Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network out there. If you want to go next level with our show, man, I want to invite you to join the Everydayers Club. There are 2 different tiers you can find. That link is in the show notes, lockedontarheels.supercast.com to learn more. Okay, I want to project ahead a little bit this week because North Carolina, for the first time since Stanford and Cal have joined the ACC, the Tar Heels are making the trip out there. They had practice yesterday afternoon, and then they flew out last night, are there. Why? Because they want to start getting adjusted, want to start getting their body routines and rhythms ready to be on Pacific time so that by the time they play Stanford tomorrow night and by the time they play Cal on Saturday afternoon, their bodies are hopefully ready to handle it. I know there's all sorts of sleep studies and rhythms and all of this from sports psychologists of how do we find peak performance when we have to make these time zone shifts. Well, Carolina's doing everything they can to hopefully mitigate that. Now, here's the thing about Stanford and Cal. They are not great basketball teams. They're not bad. They're not poor, but they're not elite. Right? Like there's capability there. I'll introduce you to Stanford tomorrow because we'll do our full game preview on the Wednesday show. But they got, you've heard of all the crazy good freshmen in this nation. Holy smokes. I got another one to tell you about that you might not have heard of because all we hear about is in the ACC, at least from freshmen, is Caleb Wilson, obviously, Cam Boozer, Michael Brown at Louisville. But oh my, there's another one that I can't wait to fill you in on. He's really fun to watch. And I can't wait to see him play. I just hope Carolina beats him up. But for Stanford and Cal both, in the net rankings, they're both in the 70s. At KenPom, they're both in the 80s. At Torvik, Stanford's higher at 65, but Cal's down at 90. And so these are teams that North Carolina should beat. But hold the phone, hang on, hold on to your horses. However, heading out west for this double, playing both these teams is no easy feat. That's part of why Carolina left Monday after practice to try and adjust again. Now, as a reminder, the ACC has basically adopted what the Pac-12 used to do because they had all those pairings of teams. And so when teams head out west, usually they go in a tandem. One plays Stanford, one plays Cal, and then they flip-flop on the weekend. And that's exactly what's happening. Duke is also going out west. Carolina will play Stanford tomorrow night, Wednesday. Duke will play Cal. And then on the weekend, they'll switch. Carolina will play Cal, and Duke will play Stanford. Here's something that's nice. And again, part of why, yes, these teams aren't elite, but it's close. It's close. But right now, as things stand, each one of these games is a quad one opportunity for Carolina. Right now, they've got 3 quad one wins, and they could get to 5 if they could win both of these games. Duke, by the way, I think has 7 right now, and the 7 quad one wins. The next closest team in the nation has 5. So Duke could get up to 9 this weekend. That's kind of crazy. Now, that said, they're in the 70s. 75 on the road is the cutoff for quad 1 to quad 2. And so if Carolina and Duke could each beat both Stanford and Cal, I almost said Stal and Canford, Stanford and Cal, they might drop below 75, but we'll see what happens with that. And so what North Carolina needs to do, again, these quad 1 wins on the line, lock in game to game, not both of you and I can look at both of these games in totality. Carolina, nothing but Stanford right now. That's the focus, and that's what they've got to do. They got to lock in, get them both, and come home with a sweep. However, let me caution you, that is much easier said than done. Why is that, Isaac? Because these teams don't seem that great. Well, Here's what I'll tell you about these West Coast trips where you go out and play both teams. Ask yourself, how many times in the first year plus seasons of Stanford and Cal being in the ACC has a team gone out west and swept both games? Cal and Stanford, they won both those games. Well, I'll tell you, because I've done the research. You know me, this is what happens. Last year, 9 ACC teams went out west to play both schools. Would you like to venture a guess, oh, my fair listener or watcher? How many of those teams went home with a sweep? How many of those teams went home having beaten both Cal and Stanford? I'll give you a second to think and process. In fact, I'll go ahead and tell you the schools it was last year. Virginia, Virginia Tech, Florida State, Miami, Syracuse, Wake, NC State, SMU, and Boston College. How many of those 9 schools swept the Cal schools last year? 3, 2, 1. The answer is 1. One school swept last year, and that was Wake, interestingly enough. And there have been 2 teams that have gone out there at the early part of this year. It's Louisville, it's Notre Dame. Neither one of them did it either. They both split with Cal and Stanford, meaning that 11 teams have taken the no-Cal, the Northern California trip. One of those 11 schools has swept. So the statistics are not on the side of the Tar Heels to go win both of these games. But here's the problem. I said this after the SMU game. Because the Tar Heels dropped that one, now they've got more pressure where you need these road wins, especially because that's where the vast majority of your quad 1 opportunities are going to come from, ACC road games. As I just said a second ago, both of these right now are that. So Carolina's got to do it. So of those 9 schools that went out west last year, again, 1 Wake won both games. 3 schools split 1-1, Virginia Tech, Syracuse, and SMU. Obviously, as I said, also that's what Louisville and Notre Dame did this year. But the other 5 schools, so Virginia, Florida State, Miami, NC State, and Boston College, all of whom weren't great last year, but they all went 0-2 in those 2 games. In all last year, in the first year of Cal and Stanford being in the conference, teams that went out west were 5-13 in those 18 games. So Carolina, Duke as well, have a big challenge on their hands this weekend. However, I think you recognize from me mentioning all that the caliber of teams that has head out west hasn't been North Carolina, hasn't been Duke. Yes, Louisville is that caliber this year, but when they went out there, as is the case right now, no Michael Brown. He didn't play. So it checks out that they beat Cal and lost to Stanford, right? Makes sense. So the Tar Heels, again, an uphill battle on their hands because, oh my goodness, I want both of these wins. But only one team has done it. We'll see how they'll do, but to get them both, they got to win tomorrow against Stanford again. I'll get you ready for that one on the Wednesday show. Switching to football in the transfer portal, the Tar Heels unfortunately just lost some defensive line pieces over the weekend, but thankfully brought in some more. And oh, baby, the tight end room keeps growing. Got to get better there. We'll look at all of that to wrap the show coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about game time, there's nothing like college football season, you guys. Tailgates, packed stadiums, being right there in the middle of it all, the energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. We're down to 1 game, 1 more opportunity to go see college football this season. But actually getting tickets, well, that part used to be the frustrating part of it. Long queues, having to remember logins, prices jumping up on you at checkout. That's why Game Time gives the advantage back to you, the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock amazing college football and basketball tickets in just a few taps. Speaking of which, looking ahead. So as I said, Carolina at Stanford tomorrow, at Cal on Saturday, then hosting Notre Dame midweek next week. There are tickets on Game Time right now for under $50 for each of those 3 games. So if you live in California and you don't ever get to see the Heels, now's your chance. If you want to see Carolina back in the Dean Dome for under $50 next week, now's your chance. Go snatch them up at Game Time. The app is so easy to use. You can go from browsing to buying in just a few minutes. I also love their zone deals. Instead of picking the actual seat, if you want to save even more money, you pick the section you want to sit in. Game Time selects the specific seat, and that gives you even more money off. So take the guesswork out of buying college basketball and football tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the football portal keeps on portaling. By the way, I got to give a massive shout out to our guy, Matt Z, who is down under in our Locked On Tar Heels Discord, man. Always keeping the Discord up to date on all the football portal news, guys in, guys out, re-signings, all of that, man. If you're not already in the Locked On Tar Heels Discord, you need to come just for the price of admission with Matt, man. He does a fantastic job, and you don't want to miss out. Okay, by the way, a reminder, the portal closes on Friday, which is January 16th. Now, as a reminder, that does not mean you have to have chosen your school by Friday. It just means if you want to enter the portal, you have to have done that by Friday, or at least entered your paperwork, even if it hasn't been announced publicly. So just keep that in mind. And remember, for football, this is the only one now. They closed it down. They shortened it. There will not be one after spring football. So this is it, which I think is a good move. One note, Carolina re-signed defensive tackle Isaiah Johnson. That is massive because over the weekend, Carolina loses two defensive tackles or two defensive linemen, CJ Mims and DeAndre Robinson, to the transfer portal. And obviously that is not good news. They're both great. And I believe, if I remember correctly, have both already re-signed. I think one of them with Texas A&M. I can't get, anyway, they're both gone. And that's really, frankly, what matters. Also, Sean Tompkins, an offensive tackle who came to Carolina by way of Baylor in this transfer portal season. It sounds like he's exploring some other options and might be back on the move. We'll keep our eyes on that. You also maybe saw, and come on, man, like heel of the week in the negative sense, heel. Bullet Goss, man, what are we doing? He goes to NC State following that Van Allen Lubin path. Come on, buddy. No. Also, Bryce Baker. Boy, I wish he was still at Tar Heel, but he's off to Virginia Tech. Good for Blacksburg. Sad for Chapel Hill. All right. It's been, probably midweek last week, late last week, since we updated guys coming into Carolina through the transfer portal. So I just want to update us there. I'll do so. Let's start with defense. Again, obviously with Mims and Robinson out, Carolina needs to continue to add on the defensive line. So that's part of why it's so great to re-sign Isaiah Johnson. By the way, if you're writing the word re-sign, for the love of everything holy, put a hyphen in there between re and sign. You know why? Because if you don't, you just said resign. And resign and resign are two wildly different things, right? If I said, oh, Carolina's Isaiah Johnson is resigning from the team versus resigning with the team, like, okay, come on. That hyphen matters, people. Don't forget the hyphen. Okay. But not only did Carolina re-sign Isaiah Johnson, they also just got a commitment from Richmond's Donovan Hoylett, a defensive lineman. Actually, the second, if I'm thinking correctly, Richmond player in the class for North Carolina. That's good stuff there. Who's the other one? It's evading me right now. I'm scrolling through the list. Oh, the linebacker, Peyton Steelman. So there you go, which is next, who I want to mention. Peyton Steelman, also from Richmond, a linebacker from there. And Carolina also gets a veteran linebacker from Syracuse, Derek McDonald. We will take that. On offense, more pieces coming in. I will start by mentioning Shaq McRoy, an offensive lineman who comes from Arkansas, where he got to hang out with Bobby Petrino last year. And so wanted to stay with Coach Petrino. Really cool. And so coming over. Also, another offensive lineman, Rowan Byrne from Clemson. A couple other positions. Carolina gets Mason Humphrey, a wide receiver from Lehigh. Aaron Burrell, a kicker from LSU, is coming in. That's good news. And also, Carolina, you might remember, had gotten a commitment a week or so ago from tight end Jackson Warren from Colorado State. Well, now they have two more tight ends. Carolina trying to build this tight end room back up. They didn't utilize the tight ends well enough last year. Consequently, Jake Johnson is out the door, and we'll see what happens there. But the Tar Heels signed two others, Jelani Thurman from Ohio State, a tight end, and Jordan Washington from Texas, a tight end. And so we'll take that. I know my wife is going to be happy as a big Longhorns fan. And so there you go. So Carolina continuing to bring guys in. We'll see how many more, some of it might depend on how many guys are out the door and all of that, but might be some more pieces coming and going. We probably need to have Anthony Pagnotta on soon to unpack his thoughts about where things are at with it and the guys coming and going as well. You guys, that's it for today's show. I appreciate you so much for joining me here on a Tuesday. If you haven't subscribed to Locked on Tar Heels already on video and audio, do it now so you don't miss a second of the show. Heck, we're going to go live after the game tomorrow night, after Carolina beats Stanford. Please, please, please let that happen. And you don't want to miss out. So make sure you have subscribed. Make sure you hit that bell notification so you get notified as soon as we go live, and you can just tap right in. If you haven't checked out the brand new Everydayers Club, that link's in the show notes as well. Go look at it. Let me know if you got any questions. Would love to answer those for you. LockedOnTarHeels@gmail.com is the email address. If you haven't joined our Locked on Tar Heels Discord, man, it is such a great community of Tar Heel fans. We already shouted out Matt Z today on the show. Would love for you to be the next one to join that group. That link is also in the show notes. Absolutely free to join. You guys, it's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We will talk again tomorrow, but until then, peace.